film world. I am the Patrick, your host of Tomorrow Comes Movies, the podcast that spoiler talks movies. And each episode, I'll be joined by a guest co-host from a roster of movie fans to varying degrees. Welcome back, and thank you so much for tuning in. Trying to see here what I need to tell you. I am on break still. Gotta be honest, really burnt out. May not come back at all this month. We're going to see. I'm recording this the day before Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey comes out. If I do not go tomorrow, then I am truly burnt out. So I'm hoping I'll be seated for Christopher Nolan's new movie. Actually, one last thing I need to add before we get to introducing our first time guest co-host is you can always join the conversation no matter what episode you listen to of Tomorrow Comes Movies. You can do it one to two ways. Hashtag TOC Movies wherever you're at on social media. You can also hashtag TOC Movies and add us at TOC Movies. And yeah, let us know. We would love to hear more feedback. And another thing, if you listen to the show, I'd really appreciate it if you could review us wherever you listen to it on the podcast apps. So yeah, definitely give us a review. That would really help. And of course, on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, please drop a comment. I really like to get more feedback from you guys. Anyways, still working on a bunch of episodes to come out. So if you're a guest that came on, your episode is in the works. So stay tuned for that. More action series, more hidden gems. This episode features a first-time guest co-host. This is someone all the way from the United Kingdom, and they are an awesome Twitter mutual of mine, and we share a love for movies. And one other thing that you'll see as we do this introduction, I'm very excited to have them come on. Please welcome awesome Twitter mutual with one of the coolest names, by the way, Cinema.Rich. How you doing, Cinema.Rich?
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. It's always great to just be able to chat films and be a big geek for a while.
Yeah, and I was gonna say right before we recorded, but I had to. Is I see your physical media collection. That's the first thing that I look at and I go, wow, it's beautifully curated the way you have it on the shelves.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've recently started recollecting. Like many years ago, I would try and pick up like whatever movie I could that was coming out. I worked in retail, so on a Monday I'd pick up everything I could, and I had like a collection of probably like 500-600 like DVDs and Blu-rays, and Apple TV came along. And I kind of got suckered into kind of like, oh, it's 4K HDR. It was cheaper, more accessible. And I was like, why am I buying all this physical media? I've just got nowhere to put it. Like DVDs are old. Like it's going to be all gone in a couple of years. So I sold everything. And I exclusively went digital for many, many years. And it was only recently in the last couple of years where I started picking up physical media again. And I just like missed having the artwork, and you know there's boutique labels and you just get this amazing artwork and booklets and like behind the scenes photography and stuff, and the restorations for all these kind of old films that you won't find on Netflix or Amazon or whatever else. And when I first put my first 4K physical media in and it played, I was like blown away. It was like watching the film all over again for the first time, because no matter what you think the 4K is on Apple movies or whatever, Netflix Prime, it's not real 4K. And you don't notice the difference until you really see it. And in particular, like the picture is a big upgrade, but the sound is the biggest upgrade. And so, yeah, I just became addicted back into it. And so I've been collecting quite ruthlessly over the last 2 years.
Amazing. And I love that you started off like this, because I do this thing called the introduction, and I love that was a great intro with the physical media, because as you're telling me the story, when I first saw you come on screen, you have a movie that I need to get, and I have a region-free Blu-ray player, which is the original Dawn of the Dead. But I love the story about digital, because physical media collectors, we tend to get very defensive, like Floyd Mayweather style, with with when we hear people talk about digital, but your story, I appreciate your honesty and thank you for sharing because yeah, I also was like, okay, there's I don't have to collect everything. Some things are on digital, but then you get to a point where you're talking about like sound and picture, and like some things aren't available. But also like space is another thing because that's what one of our biggest kryptonites is the space. But then you realize at some point you're like, I want to get certain movies. You have to eventually collect. And the thing with physical media collectors, we just have to be a little bit maybe better at what we're collecting because out of nowhere, it's like, I only bought five. Yeah, last week. Okay, now we're at, yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And with the introduction, I want to ask you, how did you come up with your name Cinema Rich? Because I feel cinema rich when I get my new physical media, and then I look at my wallet and I'm reality broke.
You've inadvertently given my name much more meaning than what it does. So my birth name's Richard, so shortened it to Rich. And I came up with it purely because one day I was on TikTok. I don't really go on it an awful lot, but there was an instance where I was at home a lot. I wasn't working, so I was diagnosed with leukemia, so I'm good now. So, but I was at home recovering a lot, so I kind of thought, oh, what's this TikTok? I'll go on there. Um, and lots of girls that are too young in their bedrooms dancing. And then after a while, I came across this account. He was talking about movies, and it was I think it was Cinema Joe. He was talking about movies. Like, wow, this guy is really cool. And then the more I kind of watched some of his videos and reviews, then the more I got served up more and more content to do with like films and things. And I thought, oh, this is actually awesome. And so I basically just ripped his name off, if I'm honest, because I couldn't think of anything clever. But I prefer yours. I prefer your analogy of it. If
I
anyone asks me in the future, I'm going to go with that.
Yes, go with that because I mean, I think it's cool that you took your name and then you added something you like, and also I'm glad that you made a recovery from when with
Thank
leukemia.
you.
That's tough. But I gotta be honest, Cinema Joe's cool because he got you to become Cinema Rich. But I rather be
Yeah.
rich than Cinema Joe because I'm just like I'm one step away from being Average Joe. If I had that name, respect to him, but for me, I love that. I love that name. That I always ask people their names because I always say this in every episode. But when I see you, I see your handle, your Twitter handle above your head, and so I'm just like in my mind, like even though you share that it's short for Richard, I'm like in my mind he's cinema rich, and you are looking at your physical media. Yeah, you're cinema rich, and you're also cinema clean because it's really well done. I have to
Thank you.
rearrange uh, mine. Now, one of my first questions, because everybody's what I call the film journey, their exploration through cinema is different. What film, there's a lot of films in this, what film or films made you realize you love films?
So I think I watched one of your other podcasts, and there was a guy on there, and he kind of said the film that I'm going to say, but it was The Thing. Um, and I remember being, I want to say I was about 8, around that sort of age. And I was around a friend's house, and we were just messing around. And I remember kind of we walked through his living room, and I looked at the TV, and there's this film on the TV, and I was absolutely captivated by it. I had no idea what it was. It was just crazy, like this creature. And anyway, years and years and years passed, and I then got into films as a kid, and I was always trying to push the boundaries of what I was allowed to watch. So at home, my mum would always have loads of VHSs, and I'd always be like, I want to see the 18 one because I'll be like 10 or 12. I want to see the what's on that one because it's like, I wanted to see the gore. I wanted the violence, and it was years and years and years later that I decided to watch John Carpenter's The Thing. Um, I didn't really know anything of it. I didn't kind of like the name. It kind of put me off a little bit because I thought it was just a bit, I don't know, a bit cheesy. But I chucked it on, and then there was this scene, and I had this like flashback to when I was, 8, and I saw this craziness, and it was that dog scene where there's that transformation scene where the dog kind of like tries to morph into the other dogs and things, and that's what I saw when I was a kid, and it like caught my eye. But I guess that was like the very earliest memory of movies kind of impacting me, I suppose, and having an effect. Um, but aside from that, it was always things like when I was a kid, like Die Hard. I love Die Hard. I must have seen it hundreds of times, man. And it just kind of captivated my imagination when you see guys like flying through glass and they're getting shot and all this, these stakes are like flying out of them and there's debris going everywhere. And like when you're a kid, like a young boy, like your imagination starts going wild. And yeah, it was things like that and Aliens, Terminator 2, all those kind of 90s kind of classic films were like the staple of my film journey.
Wow. I enjoy hearing you talk. One, your accent's amazing. I'm a huge
Thank you.
fan because everything sounds so regal, and I can feel your passion and your love for movies. If I was to say like Die Hard, this would be me. Yeah, it's pretty badass, and like nothing comes after that. And you just went like, and but the thing, for instance, you know, I had Paul, the other gentleman you were talking about. Yeah, he also said the same thing. But I love hearing when people who come on, my guests, and they bring up the same movie because everyone has a different experience with it. And the thing is incredible. It is funny though because it's just called John Carpenter's The Thing. Like they didn't have to put too much work into it. They're like, what is this movie going to be called? It's like, well, it's The Thing. And it's like perfect, and it's stuck. I don't know in 2026 if that comes out today that people are going to be excited to hear. Let's go see that movie. What's it called? It's the Thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I have a cousin, excuse me, who is British. And I remember when he came over and I had met him, and it's weird because he's half Filipino, I'm half Filipino, and he's half white. We knew each other. We were like the superstars in the family because we were from the Western Hemisphere. I don't know why it wasn't that great. And he came over, and I remember having to learn about British humor, and I really dug it because you guys are so clever in what you'll say. Where like I think Americans were more like straight at it, but you guys will say something that's so elegant and clever that you're like, aha! Like I'm a huge Guy Ritchie fan in
Uh-huh.
terms
Yeah.
of the British crime underworld movies. Aladdin's okay, but like Snatch is my jam. Lock, Stock, and Two Barrels. The Gentleman, and of course, one of my probably now my favorite with Snatch is Rock and Rolla. And also, there's something I said this with another guest, but this is true with you guys call it the United Kingdom, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost called it England, but I don't want to offend anybody because we UK. There's something in the water over there too. Because in my film journey in the 2010s, the emergence of so many actors from your country who became some of my favorites. I mean, Tom Hardy is my guy. Idris Elba. I mean, it is nuts what's over there. And I love yeah, so I love rock and roll. I was really hoping Toby Cabell was gonna be the next big thing. I was clearly devastated when
Yeah.
but Mark Strong, another one from that era that I'm a huge fan of. And so with you being from the UK, like if somebody like myself was like, I would like to check out movies from the UK, maybe some that I'm not aware of. What are some that you would recommend for international audiences?
Um, I think I think like the ones you've mentioned, of the obvious ones, like the crime ones are. If you want to get like the humor, definitely those. Um, I think I think my favorite. I'm going to go into horror a little bit. My favorite kind of British horror film or films is The Descent. Um, by Neil Marshall is amazing, and there's one called Kill List, and it's kind of like a cult film, but that you get that's very kind of brutal and in your face, very British film. But yeah, those are two that I think are fantastic.
I haven't seen either one, but I'm gonna put it on my watch list. And I just love it. I'm not gonna lie, it's so good how you guys know how to write movies. Your humor is good, the dialogue. Like I don't know. I don't know if you know him personally, Cinema Rich, but can you call Jason Statham and tell him that Snatch was phenomenal, that he can do comedy again, he can come back. He doesn't have to do the action movies. I love him, don't get me wrong, but he is so talented in Snatch that I'm just like, what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those films that I think Snatch is better than Lock Stock. Um, I think the humor's better in it, and that Brad Pitt in it is unbelievable as I think it's Mickey, um, but he's so funny, and he just he gets kind of the humor of that character and kind of what as English people kind of if we were to imitate that character, that's the sort of thing we would do. So it just hits the nail on the head. Um, also, he was in The Gentleman and Heretic. I can't remember his name, fails me.
Hugh Grant?
Hugh Grant, yeah. So he's another one where I would kind of not if he was in something, I probably wouldn't watch it if I'm honest, because he went through kind of a phase of doing lots of rom-coms, and he was always kind of like the really polite, posh, bumbling Englishman, and it was just really annoying for me personally. But yeah, when he was in The Gentleman, he was just hilarious, just brilliant, and I was like, wow, like this is like a totally different side of him that I've not previously really seen, and I loved The Gentleman. I thought it was great, and then in Heretic again, totally different character, really sinister but really kind of intelligent and just a brilliant role. So yeah, it's great when kind of actors that are typecast to a degree kind of go a different lane and they do something different, and then you're like, wow, like I didn't even realize you had that in you. Um,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Hugh Grant, naturally, I think he's extremely talented. Yeah, I'm not as big into the rom-coms like you said, but when he does movies like Heretic and he does movies like The Gentleman, I'm like, he can mix that trademark style of his with those rom-coms with these type of roles. And it's funny as you bring up The Gentleman, as I'm like, what happened to Charlie Hunnam? Another guy I like a lot, but he can't figure it out. But an actor who really impressed me was Andrew Garfield, and I had saw him
mhm.
in a movie called The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, the last Heath Ledger movie that he didn't finish and the other guys came in. But yeah, I'm always impressed. I was having a conversation like 10 years ago with somebody. I was like, "Man, the British are kicking our ass." And somebody's like, "Why do you think that is?" And I'm like, "I think it's because they're training at a level that is so intense, and I think that's why they're getting all the roles. Because I love seeing any actor get a role, but when I find out that they're from another country and you don't know for a while, it's amazing because you're just like the dedication, you know what I mean? And it's going so well that we Superman, Spider-Man have all become British at one point, and I just want to tip my hat off to you. Whatever you guys are doing over there, keep it up because I'm is many wonderful actors have come through, and so I'm so glad that you came on the show because I've been wanting to tell somebody from England. Uh, and it's funny I say that to you. I could have told my cousin, but I haven't spoken to. Probably wouldn't even understand what I'm talking about. Like who? But yeah, are you pretty? Being from that country and seeing all these amazing actors come over and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and it's Andrew Lincoln. He when he was in The Walking Dead, I first saw him. He was in a series called Teachers. It was on like a TV channel we have called Channel 4 back in the day. It was very good, like a bit of a comedy. And then he was really good in that. He kind of disappeared, and then he got this role in The Walking Dead. And I remember watching season one, like, wow, this guy, like, wow, like, good for him. Like, he's gone from this kind of quite a small series, and like the next thing I see, he's in The Walking Dead, and then it just took off, and it's like one of the biggest series kind of ever made, and it's so funny because even knowing he's British and seeing him earlier in his career, you forget that he's British because he's so good in that role. Um, you totally forget, and then when you see him doing kind of Q and A's and backstage stuff when he's just talking in his normal accent, it kind of throws you a bit because you just expect him to sound like Rick. Um, but yeah, it's amazing. And Andrew Garfield, like you mentioned, to me is the best Spider-Man you've ever had. I know it's going to be divisive, but I wish they had continued with that. So, but yeah, he's phenomenal. I love him in Hacksaw Ridge. He's done some great roles. And there's another film you because you asked me about British films. It's there's one called All of Us Strangers. It's directed by Andrew Haigh, and I saw it in the cinema a couple of years ago, and I think it just really affected me. It's just such a sad film. Um, really, it's just really emotional. I actually came out of the cinema like my chest hurt, like physically hurt, and I haven't seen a film kind of in recent memory that has been so like emotional, so brilliantly made. I wish. I wish the guys who were acting in it got an Oscar, but they didn't. They weren't nominated. But it's just a phenomenal film. Yeah, one of the best.
You know, and when you said the thing, I was like in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, I saw that in theaters. The one, and I'm gonna look so bad after I just dropped all these British actors, but the gentleman, I can't remember the main actor, but the one with Paul Mescal, right? That's the one where they're living that.
Yeah, and Andrew Scott.
There you go.
I want
I
to say.
think so. I think so. Yeah, he, you nailed it. That was one of the most phenomenal films I saw in theaters. I remember walking out and I drove home thinking about it, and I would think about it for days. And then I had saw it already, but I was like, "This is a movie that should have been." I was convinced it was going to get nominated. You know, or season can be tricky. You know, but yeah, that's a great movie. Those two are phenomenal actors, and that is a very you're right. That actually made me. By the way, that movie made me eat my words when I was not a big Jamie Bell fan. Love Claire Foy, she's amazing, but Jamie Bell Jumper did some damage to me. I didn't even see the movie. I was so done with him, and then in that Fantastic Four 2015. But that's a great one. Listen to Cinema.Rich. This is why his name is Cinema.Rich. He's giving you the goods that will make you rich in cinema. And with Andrew Garfield, I want to give you a little tidbit from back in the past. I was on the front lines defending him because I am not a big Tobey Maguire fan, nor am I a big fan of the Sam Raimi trilogy. I acknowledge they're good films. I don't hold them in high regard. The Amazing Spider-Man movies are okay, but Garfield was so good. And for people to argue that he was not, to me, I was like, you're outrageous. If you look at those two performances, I I cannot see how. No disrespect to Tobey Maguire, he started off, but Andrew Garfield is the more better performance. Now, how do you feel about Tom Holland as Spider-Man?
I don't like it. I don't like it. Um, I find the films then look, and this is cinema. Like films are what you make them, aren't they? What I don't like under the person, it's their masterpiece, and that's the great thing about it because we can all talk about it, and as long as we're respectful to each other, um, then it's great discussion, isn't it? But to me, I'm just exhausted with Marvel, and I find the new Spider-Man films I find them very boring. I find them bland, and I don't. He's a great actor. I just find him in that role quite annoying. Um, where the Amazing Spider-Man films, I had more heart. They were more kind of emotionally charged, I think, and I think they were just the characters were better written, and is it Electro or whatever, played by Jamie Foxx. That character is so well written, and I don't know why the film kind of no one likes it, but I thought personally it was the best film we've had. Um, I loved it. Um, but yeah, I'm just a bit exhausted with Marvel. Um, yeah, they started off really good, but I think when the money started coming in, And at the end of the day, it's a money maker, isn't it? And I think when they started pumping out all these films constantly and in the series, and it just became exhausting, and I can't watch them anymore.
I'm glad I didn't wear my Marvel hat. I'm just kidding. You like I love Marvel. I'm still into it because that was a big thing for me. But I understand and I appreciate your honesty because there's so many other people that would say that in a totally more negative way, like they're trash. And you gave valid reasons. But the Amazing Spider-Man 2, I'm about to tell you something that's gonna make you go, what? Um, I was so done with that movie that when Gwen Stacy dies, it's quiet, right? Remember, it's like a really dramatic scene. This is a Patrick that should no longer exist. I started clapping.
No,
I was done with the
no.
I went back and saw it in theaters when they brought back all the Spider-Man, and I've come to appreciate it more because one thing you said about when the Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, like Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are perfect in that, and you can't go wrong. Like I really felt their story, and it was heartbreaking. I didn't clap the second time that I saw it. I was like, "Oh, this sucks," you know. But I appreciate that you're out here defending the Amazing Spider-Man films because I don't think we appreciate those movies. I think there was so much um, anger that we didn't get Spider-Man 4 from a lot of fans that they went after Andrew Garfield. I don't think those movies they're not some of my favorites. Well, I mean, if I had to choose them over the Sam Raimi, I'm about to get canceled, but I would take them. I definitely loved the movies for what they are. And when he returned in No Way Home, I was the biggest clapper in my showing because they were going crazy for Tobey Maguire. But when he showed up, I thought he was the heart of the movie. And I think that movie really changed people's perspective of him because now all of a sudden you never see anybody say, I don't like Andrew Garfield. Now they're all like, he's good. But back in 2012 and in that time, you remember they were like, no, he's not good. He's terrible and he's too old. As if Tobey Maguire was at the same age, like when he came in, but he looks young. But I appreciate the honesty and yeah, Marvel. Yeah, they were pumping out too much, right? Like by the time I was fine with it, but I get why people got exhausted because it definitely there's times where you can see the quality is a little different than what it used to be, and now it seems like a lot of people don't like Marvel, and I get it. It's been around for a long time. I mean, I was working at a theater when this first showed up. What do you think? Like with because I know this isn't one of the questions I gave you, but with Marvel, what do you think they should do after these two Avengers movies are going to do? Do you think maybe they take a little bit of a break, or maybe just go with like two films a year again?
Yeah, I think they just need to kind of just strip it back a little bit. Like it's okay to like pull the pace back. And look, I'm not a big comic book kind of guy. So my watching of Marvel films is kind of for what it is on the screen. So there's probably loads and loads of like in things that if you were deep into the comics and the lore, you'd be like, oh, that's great, that's great, that's great. And a lot of that goes over my head. So maybe that's why I enjoy the Amazing Spider-Man more than many other people because I'm not like invested in the lore of it. I just kind of enjoy it for what's on the screen. But I think they just need to kind of just tone it back and just really like work on just the writing, I guess. Like it doesn't have to be like a million miles an hour, this kind of dopamine hit of like it's like CGI of everything, like everything, just craziness all over. Like strip it back and get the characters, and if you get the characters right, then you become more emotionally involved in the film, and then it's a better film overall for it. So me personally, I'm happy to have less action in it, but it's better written. Um, Quite a few of the recent Marvel films I just plain haven't watched. I think the last one I watched was it Shang-Chi? But I watched that, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I liked it. Um, but yeah, I'm more of a DC kind of person. If I had to pick, um, Batman is my favorite if I've got to pick. Um, and again, I think it's purely because it's a bit more grounded in some kind of believable reality, loosely. And I think the characters are just a bit more interesting for me. I think when there's lots of like superpowers involved and the stakes feel quite low, it doesn't feel like they could get hurt, and so it kind of pulls me out of it a bit. But are they bad films? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you look at the Marvel films before the resurgence of all this, they were pretty terrible. So as a comic book fan, you're having the greatest time, and that's great.
We appreciate your service for admitting that because people don't want to admit that. And I'm like, no, there was an error that I was sick of the adaptations. And then I got into comics after I think Incredible Hulk. But I can't complain too much with Marvel until we see what happens with Doomsday. If Doomsday, I mean, if that goes sideways, I might, you might not see me on Twitter for a while
They've got a lot riding on that on Doomsday. They've got a hell of a lot riding on it. I think they will do a great job. I don't think for 1 minute they'll drop the ball. I think there's too much going on it. And the other kind of the Avengers, movies, the last kind of big ones were really good. With Thanos, but yeah, I don't think they'll drop the ball. And I think probably one of the best Marvel things that has come out for me personally is the Daredevil series. Now, I haven't seen the new one on Disney Plus because I haven't got Disney Plus, but the first, I think it's two series that was on Netflix, was just absolutely phenomenal, uh, incredible. So hopefully more of that, and I hope if they are going to kind of morph it into the films, they don't water it down because kind of part of it is like that gritty kind of, and kind of I'm going to talk about action a bit, but kind of it's got that kind of gritty fight kind of action, and you feel those punches in it, and it's probably one of the best things for me personally, that they've come out in quite some time.
agreed. Yeah, the Born Again's pretty good. I will say this: Charlie Cox and Andrew Lincoln. We need Hollywood wake up. Let's get these guys in whatever. Yeah, because I forgot to mention that I think Andrew Lincoln is incredible. So is Charlie Cox. Just talented individuals that I hope will translate to movies because they're just too talented. And also, nobody in the history of media has ever said Carl like Andrew Lincoln is so good. Every time he said Carl, I was like, take a shot. But he does it so well. I feel what he's trying to tell me. But yeah, the Daredevil series, whenever, if you ever get a chance to check out Born Again, they're doing really good stuff with it. I don't know how, some people say it's not as good as the original series, but I mean, it's hard to duplicate that series when you had a big time gap and also you're trying to kind of integrate it with the MCU. So I love that you brought up Charlie Cox, and I'll tell you this true story. I almost had an interview with him. I met him at a con, and the rep at the con says to me, "If only you would have contacted me a week ago, I would have gave you Charlie Cox." The depth
Wow,
in my heart, I was like, but one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Truly loves what he's doing, and I think that's why he's so successful.
that's amazing. Oh wow.
But back to you because I do this. I will ramble. I love to go into tangents. But what are some of your favorite movies? This is like a 4 or 5 in 1. Favorite movies, actors, actresses, writers, and directors.
Okay. So I've touched on a couple. So, movies, The Thing, um, Forrest Gump, All of Us Strangers, Seven, Capote, and There Will Be Blood are probably like ones that are kind of off the top of the head. I think they're all perfect films. There's lots of perfect films to me, um, but they're perfect films. And I struggle. My letterboxed top four recently changed. I had the Banshees of I can't pronounce it in Sheeran was one of them, but I swapped it out for Seven. But it kind of stays the same. I'm not one that can swap it in and out. Something really special's got to come along for me to kind of swap it around. But yeah, they're I love films where you get some sort of reaction. So whether it's it breaks your heart, makes you cry, whether it's exciting, whatever it is. I love films that make you feel something, and to me, the worst kind of film is just a film where you're just indifferent, or you're just like, nah, it's all right. I'm going to forget it in 10 minutes. Um, so to me, that would be like a bad film to me. Um, but in terms of like actors, so in some of the sense of Daniel Day-Lewis, I think is phenomenal. Um, Philip Seymour Hoffman is just incredible, and it's like, so sad that he's no longer with us. But his performances in Capote, there's a film called Happiness. I think he was the best thing about Mission Impossible 3. Um, just a phenomenal talent. I think Frances McDormand, she was in Nomadland and Three Billboards. Just incredible. Just heartbreaking every time I see her. And Emma Stone, um, she's just killing it at the moment. And she seems to be in nearly every Yorgos Lanthimos film coming out at the moment. So he obviously they get on, and there's a real connection between them two. It's kind of like the new Johnny Depp and Tim Burton sort of combo. But yeah, she's phenomenal. Um, and like directors, I think I tried to go a little bit different. I've got the obvious. Nolan is a big one for me. I just love the scale of his films. They're just massive. They're like, you have to see them in the cinema because they're just bigger than life. And I love that about his films. And I love that he kind of plays with time, and sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't for me. But after the film, I'm always thinking about it. I'm like, oh, that was that. And yeah, I just think that it's incredible. But some kind of other kind of, I guess, coming up and coming ones. So Brandon Cronenberg, I think he's done 3 films. All of them have been brilliant. They've got such a unique kind of style to them, like body horror, but really different. And there's Panos Cosmatos, who did Mandy. So it was kind of like a Nick Cage resurgence after Mandy, but he did an episode for The Cabinet of Curiosities, which was on Netflix. He directed one of the episodes for that, and again, just a really cool B movie, neon lit, super gory, crazy kind of vibe to his work. I love it. Yeah, just so original, so different. And then the other one is Andrew Haigh again. So All of Us Strangers, and he did one called Lean on Pete, which again, just by the end of the film, I was just sobbing my heart out. But an incredible film. He just does kind of like emotion, isolation, and kind of the feeling of like being lost and kind of trying to find who you are. He does that so well. Um, yeah, anything kind of attached to those guys, I'm all in. I don't need to know the synopsis. I'll just go see it because 99% of the time I'm gonna come out a happy man.
Yeah. I mean, I had to contain my excitement when I hear Christopher Nolan. I don't care what people are saying on film Twitter. That man can do no wrong for me. I'm right. I've rode with Nolan since The Dark Knight, and I have no plans of jumping off. Um, I do need to turn in my card for Philip Seymour Hoffman and Nicolas Cage, because I have not seen Mandy or Happiness or Capote, which is crazy considering I love them both. But I'm gonna everything you mentioned that I haven't seen, I'm going to add to my list. But I love the people you pick, like Daniel Day Lewis and Frances McDormand. I mean, two goats. I mean, if they put out a movie, you have a high chance of winning an Oscar because they are built differently. Going to physical media, as we talked about, I wanted to ask you because in America, it's very like the stores are dwindling down on selling physical media in stores. Um, what about the UK? Is that something similar, or are there stores that sell new and old physical media?
Yeah, I think you've got it better than us, because I know you have like Barnes and Noble, and you have some of the other kind of like big kind of department stores, and they have like a section and all that kind of stuff, and you have like the big Criterion sales and all that kind of stuff. I see it online. In the UK, it's bleak for physical media, I have to say. So you've got like a couple of main stores. So you've got like HMV, which are like they just do kind of all kinds of physical media, but they're they're few and far between. So they used to be like one in every town, um, but now, yeah, it's kind of for me. I can get to one within like 30 minutes. I'm 40. I'm kind of like an hour from London, so if I needed to get into London, I can get in there. Um, but there's another shop called CEX, so it's all kind of like second hand. You can trade stuff in, and you can get some great stuff on there. So I picked up Mad Max Fury Road, which is like a limited edition steelbook, totally out of print. Managed to pick it up there for like £20. Um, and I actually got the Halloween. There's like a Halloween steelbook set, the Gordon Green ones, um, out of print. Like people are selling it on eBay for 200 quid, and I got it second hand, perfect condition, not a mark on it, for like 70 quid. So it's there, but it's mainly online.
Wow. Yeah. See that it's heartbreaking because I would like to see. I was hoping that other countries were not because we're real bad right now. But I guess looking at it from another country, from your perspective, yeah, I shouldn't be complaining because we do have places. But yeah, actually, without the UK, there's a place I've heard of HMV. There's a place called like Limelight Collectibles. I don't know if it's just an online store. And then there's a place called RareWaves.com, and that's where I'm getting my gold, Cinema.Rich. You guys will put out movies on Blu-ray because I can't stand DVDs. I'll buy it, but I don't want it. So I was able to find this movie called Wicked Little Letters with Jesse Buckley and Olivia Colman, and I did not want the DVD version, so I found it there. And also, like, you guys will get movies that we won't put on physical media, like Melissa Barrera's Your Monster. So I had to invest in a region-free Blu-ray player, which has paid off because apparently Arrow based in the UK?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they have all kinds of things too that I can get over there that I can't here. And so I'm glad that there are places for you to be able to get things. I'm glad you got Mad Max Fury Road. You also
But you
did.
guys have A24, and we can't get A24. Like the nice, you get the nice editions, and so I've got to get them imported. So that sucks. So I've got one. I've got a couple behind me, but yeah, it's hard because I would love those.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. I almost bought Sorry Baby, and it was a Canadian import, and it did not have the nice packaging like you're talking about, just like a regular. And I was like, wait, that's strange. But I'm gonna wrap it up with these questions because they pertain to our movie review we're about to do. Which of these directors do you think is best at creating and capturing action? Here are your choices: John Woo, Michael Bay, James Cameron, David Leitch, George Miller, Chad Stahelski, or Robert Rodriguez?
I think because the question is about kind of capturing the action, and so I think it is John Woo. He's just got an eye for it. It's like in his DNA. He just he's like a kid. You know when you're a kid and you draw like you're drawing a supercar, and it's like all over exaggerating. You've got these massive exhaust pipes, and you've got a big engine that sticks out the front, and like wheels that are like 90% of the vehicle. And he's like that for action. He just knows what works. He knows what's cool, and he's like that kid for action films. And I think he's just got this way of getting the energy across on screen. Are his films as good as some of the other directors you've said? No, I don't think so. If it was a more a question of who's directs the better action films, I would say Michael Bay.
Okay. I agree on John Woo. I think Michael Bay has been getting a lot of love on this podcast, and it's good to see because I don't have an issue with him. I know people are very critical of his work, but man, he just makes a good blockbuster. I ain't gonna lie. Now, in terms of action movies, what are some of your favorites?
So Die Hard is one of the best, um, and the best Christmas movie in the world. The Rock, Con Air, Bad Boys, The Raid, and I have to say The Matrix, because I saw that in the cinema when it came out, and it was like mind melting. You were like, I've never seen anything like this put to screen in my life, sort of thing. So it has to be up there as one of the greats.
Wow, you mentioned the raid. But you know the Matrix, I saw it came back to theaters like 2 years ago, and there was this guy who was filming it, and I'm like, it's been out since like 1999.
This
He
isn't new.
and he had like this the phones were like the old keyboard ones, and I was just like, what are you doing? Uh, and the last question for your introduction, I want you to rank these John Woo movies, and hopefully you've seen them all. If not, it's no big deal. Here are your choices, and then you rank them with one being your favorite, and so on, so on, so on. The Killer, Hard Boiled, The First, A Better Tomorrow, Face Off, Hard Target, and Mission Impossible 2.
So there's some of them I haven't seen. So annoyingly, over my shoulder is The Killer, still in its wrapper. So I need to see that. But the ones I have seen, I was the top three are interchangeable for me. But I have settled on it. So Hard Boiled number one, Face Off number two, Hard Target number three, and then Mission Impossible 2. And I did throw in an extra on Silent Night, so I shot
Okay.
that one in there as well. But for me, I could. I know people are going to give me a hard time. I think Hard Boiled is in every way his best film, but I have so much nostalgia tied in with Hard Target and Face Off. I find it very difficult to. I find it difficult to put Hard Boiled above them, but
It's all
I
it's
know that's the right choice.
No, no. I mean, it's all based off. At the end of the day, we all like different things. I guess I would rank it. And this is just recent. I would have been with you on this with Face Off and Hard Target, but I've changed since I've seen the first three I mentioned. But it would go Hard Boiled. I would do The Killer, A Better Tomorrow, Face Off, Hard Target, and it's so funny that I do this. Mission Impossible 2. I have a love hate relationship with it, but I might revisit it now that I'm a huge John Woo fan. But that concludes your introduction, which makes me laugh because I say this every time, Cinema.Rich. I'm like, I apologize that it's so long, but I enjoy these conversations because I get to know you. Because like this is the first time we've really interacted outside of our PFPs and be like, hey, great haul, saw what you got. You know what I mean? That's how we really kind of that was I know it's usually the first question is like how do we meet, but that's how we kind of really met was through physical media. We would see each other, you know, and I'm always like, oh, he's getting that, and it's really cool. But now we're moving to a movie review that you did mention the movie, but this is part of the May series.
Tomorrow Comes Movie Podcast presents Woo. Now that's what I call action.
You are a lifesaver. You have no idea that you did me a solid. The series is called Woo. Now that's called action. And nobody except you at the time chose John Woo. So I look like a fool naming this after him, and nobody would pick any of his movies. And so this series covers big explosions, insane car chases, gunfights with minimal use of martial arts, but there are fist fights, and it is top tier action. And you chose Hard Boiled. So I thank you so much for choosing this.
Yeah, it was. I saw your list. I looked at the list and I was like, "There's a few John Woos on here." And then I saw Shoot 'Em Up was on there, and no one ever talks about Shoot 'Em Up. And I was like, "Oh, do I pick that because I get to talk about it?" And then I thought, no, no, no. I'm gonna go Hard Boiled because it tied in perfectly because it's literally just had a brand new 4K restoration. It's literally just come out on physical media within the last kind of month. So I was like, oh, I've got to pick Hard Boiled. But I thought, oh, what is? Because I was trying to figure out what the theme was because I didn't know when I saw the list, and I was like, oh, is it films influenced by John Woo? Is that what the theme is? And then there's a few John Woos thrown in there.
Yeah, I love martial arts movies, so I have a different series in the works of that. So I had to really like curate just more of like action based. But yeah, I'm real big on John Woo. I just saw the A Better Tomorrow, Hard Boiled, and The Killer. I just saw them within the last like 6 months, and my life is changed. Where I'm struggling when I watch other action movies because I'm like, oh man, John Woo is just different. But I appreciate you picking John Woo. Now, right before I ask you the question so we can review this, I'm going to look over here. If you have not seen Hard Boiled, I don't know what you're doing. You need to stop this podcast and then go watch it. I'm sure it's on Tubi because it's always there. Come back and then listen to us talk about arguably one of the greatest action movies of all time, or not. And then you can just listen to Cinema.Rich and I and gain a little bit of richness in your cinema journey because he's going to sound way better than me talking about it. All right. Now I'm going to give the movie facts and then we'll go right into it. This was interesting because I usually do the movie facts. I look for when it was released in the United States. That was a nightmare. So, according to IMDb, this film originally released in Taiwan on March 21st, 1992, and then Hong Kong on April 16th, 1992. It's directed by John Woo, who also had a hand in the story. It's written by Barry Wong, and then a guy, according to IMDb, Gordon Chan, who's uncredited. It stars legendary actors Chow Yun-fat, Tony Leung, Teresa Mo, and Philip Chan. And this is the synopsis of Hard Boiled. A police officer teams up with an undercover cop after suffering a personal tragedy to take on a mob organization. Are you ready, Cinema-Rich?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk movies. And the best part is that some of the questions I ask will get answered, so I don't have to ask it. So, on why you chose the film, I'm glad you did. And by the way, this series will return. So if you do want to talk about Shoot 'Em Up, I don't think I've seen it. I may have. I would love to chat with you on that since you said you are a fan of it. But back to Hard Boiled. When you finished watching Hard Boiled, what were some of your first impressions of the movie?
Like, holy shit! Like, how do you how do you even begin to film something like this? Because within the first, I literally looked at it on the timer of the TV. Within the first 5 minutes, you get probably one of the best shootout action sequences I've ever seen, and that's how we start, and then it goes on from there. So by the end of the film, you're just like, wow, how the hell did they pull this off with, and back when it was made, there's no CGI or anything. Like, everything is on screen is like someone's doing it. Like some poor guy's getting thrown through that, or when this is exploding, some guy's getting thrown through the flames, and it was just like, wow, that is amazing. It's just eye candy, sensory overload.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also you're right about the CGI because this requires something that I think is different from today's filmmaking, modern filmmaking, is the prep. Okay, there's no CGI where you can redo it. You have to train with a whole team. And I think John Woo even improvises during this. Like, hey, let's try this out. You have to be at the top of your game because at any moment, Chow Yun-fat or Tony Leung or anybody else involved could get their face blown off because it's pretty insane. But my first impressions was it reminded me when I saw Mad Max Fury Road because I saw this for the first time, Hard Boiled, in theaters for the restoration. And I remember going like Mad Max Fury Road. I said, this arguably has got to be top 5, one of the greatest action movies I've ever experienced. And I mean, that's the biggest sell point is the action, but I really love these John Woo Hong Kong cinema classics because he gives you, it's not just like a bunch of action. There's a story where it really matters. Like you care about these characters that you're invested in. And also with the action, there has never been a movie where I'm like, the stakes have never been more real. Like at any moment, I'm like, is somebody gonna die? Because like, I mean, there's so like you said, like within the first 5 minutes, like something's happening. You're just like, you can't even sip tea in a tea house without worrying that you're not going to make it, or that you have to worry about the bird that they give you in each place. And by the way, you can spoil anything here because this is all open. But yeah, that was my first impression, was top tier action, top tier acting, top tier score, and just, I mean, everything else in between is top tier. Now with Hard Boiled, now that we've talked about first impressions, what were some of the highlights for you specifically with this movie?
I think the kind of the first thing that comes to mind is just that first shootout in the tea house, because it is number one, just the setting is so unique. Like, so you've got this tea house. There's all these birds in cages everywhere, on the tables, or it's hanging from the ceiling. And then there's just this insane shootout. Like 200 people get killed. People thrown everywhere. People, and there's I think Chow Fat does this like backwards slow motion like kick along the floor. He's got like two pistols in his hands, which I think then got ripped off for Max Payne, the video game. So that kind of like you watch it now and you see the influence later on, where it's kind of been copied, but it's just like this spectacle of just insanity, and it's just such a unique setting, and it just kicks the film off in such a great way that it kind of like that scene kind of stuck with me. But also like you say, the story, because a lot of action films, the story is kind of like secondary, because it's all about making you feel excited a bit about the adrenaline. But you've seen Hardboiled twice. The first time was on like a pokey, I think, some sort of download, because the rights weren't there. You couldn't get it. You couldn't buy it. You couldn't see it. Couldn't stream it. So I had this poor copy, and I enjoyed it for the visuals. And then it was only when I watched it again this time, and you start to really understand the intricacies of the story, and you don't spend a load of time on the story, but you spend enough time there. But there's loads of like themes of kind of loyalty and loss, and with the character Long, kind of his identity, and he's kind of like torn between being an undercover cop, and his loyalty to the police, but then you see him have a loyalty to one of the drug lords, is it Uncle Hoy, I think, and then he's kind of pulled in another direction by I think Johnny, I think off the top of my head, and you see kind of all the intricacies of these storylines interwoven, and that's really impressive when you think of it's not a majorly long film. But so when you weave that in with all the action, it's impressive.
Yeah, and you nailed one of my highlights. Yeah, the story. There's a lot going on with each character. I mean, there's even like a little mini story where like Chow Yun Fat is having some girlfriend issues with the madam at his job. Like he's and then his partner dying, and then like his chief is giving him a hard time. You talked about Tony Leung's Along's. He's been undercover for so long that he's built up a loyalty with his employer, Uncle Hoy, and he also has to still give information, and it's kind of blurred. And then Johnny comes in and is just like, "I'm just gonna turn up your world upside down because I'm a jerk." That story, if you didn't have that type of um, story, I don't think this movie would be as powerful. Because we know the action is like a 10 out of 10, but that story comes pretty damn close. And I love you mentioned like him doing the kickback and like shooting. The amount of times that I've never seen anybody shoot with two guns with such poetry. I mean, they make it look like a work of art. If there was an exhibit at one of the most prestigious museums of them just showing me two gun action by John Woo, I would look over and be like, this is the Picasso of my time. I love it. Like, it's incredible because we think, oh, that looks great. The action's awesome, but like the idea that somebody goes, I think this would be really cool to do. And even if sometimes it feels a little unpractical, right? It's not practical like some of this stuff. They make it look believable. Like they just narrowly escape. And the tea house would be one of the highlights. The warehouse is insane. and then the hospital, of course. But I really dug John Woo's like, I used to not be a big fan of his slow-mo and like his setup execution shots, like how he sets things up when you know something's about to go down. And now I look at that and I go, "Whoa." Hold on. Woo. Woo. That is a director that does not get enough credit for his contributions because I don't think we hold action in the same, um, category as, like, when Martin Scorsese does a drama, but I think we need to because he influenced everything. Because you brought up Max Payne was a good one. I saw Bad Boys 2, and I'm pretty sure throughout that whole movie, it's a John Woo, uh, influence fest, which drove me nuts, because I didn't know about Hard Boiled, by the way, until I came back to film Twitter in 2024. I was like, "Why does everyone keep talking about the guy from Bulletproof Monk?" Like, I was like, "That guy is, like, really hailed?" I knew Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I was like, "That's cool," but I didn't know he was this gigantic action star, and then John Woo, I'm like, Face Off's awesome, Hard Target. I'm like, "The guy from Mission Impossible? I can't stand those slow down shots." Man, do I look like a moron this episode, and I'm over here like, "He's the greatest." Um,
He's just got like, I think it's like Marmite. I think you either get it and you're all in, or it kind of annoys you a bit. And I think John Woo's just unapologetically him, and I love that. And I just have like this. There's just this running joke, like for me internally, where it's like if it's a John Woo film, it's slow mo and doves or some sort of bird, uh, uh, and he'll crowbar it into anything. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. There'll be a dove, and I love that. He's just got his own unique style, and I think the slow mo. He in Hard Boiled is probably my favourite use of it. In Hard Target, he uses it all the time. Like the guy will get out the car and it's slow mo. Like the guy will take a sip of tea, it's in slow mo. It's like every other second is a slow mo, and I love I love Hard Target because of nostalgia, but it is a bit annoying. But in Hard Boiled, he kind of is very deliberate. So in like the action, he's slowing down because it looks cool, and he just wants you to enjoy what's going on because it's just crazy. And so you're like, yeah, give it to me in slow mo. And then there's other like scenes where it'll be like a slow mo of someone like their eyes because someone's walked in and it's important. So he wants you to take your time and kind of be in that moment. And there's a moment where Long walks into a library, and he's kind of walking through this. He's walking through this turnstile, and we get a slow mo shot of just his hand with like a napkin on the turnstile. You don't need to do that in slow mo, but he's making you just stop and notice the little details, and I love that about John Woo.
Yeah, actually, nobody's ever looked cooler going to the library. I actually wanted to go to the library after I saw it because I was like, I would love to be able to look as cool as Tony Long. But yeah, the little details that you mentioned really are great when he does it because then you start focusing. If you really are into the movies, you really start focusing like, why is he showing me that? And then you realize, what happens in that scene. But yeah, with John Woo, yeah, either you get it or you don't. And I think it took me a while to get it because I think when he was in Hong Kong, he gave us the right amount of slow mo. Where then I think, and there's no disrespect to him because he's a legend, and I get it. I like Hard Target, and he uses it a lot more. And maybe now that I understand what's going on here with the Hong Kong classic, I'll watch. Well, I'll probably send you a random message one day, like, "Hey, I watch Hard Target," and I'll let you know if it still bothers me. Like Mission Possible drives me nuts, but I've come to appreciate it because it's nothing like I've ever seen before. And that's what we need from people who make movies is what really gonna captivate us and be like, that was a movie I'll never forget. Whether you like it or not, you'll respect that John Woo did that. And we have yet to see, like somebody with that much style. And so I love that you pointed that out. Now with Hard Boiled, this is an interesting question here because you never know what someone's gonna say, but were there any parts of this specific movie, Hard Boiled, that you didn't like?
Yeah, it was, and it is a personal thing. I didn't like the score. Not all of it. But there are moments where, like, there'll be like like a reveal, like a bad guy walk through, like I think it's like an hospital. They walk through like double doors, and this weird music will play. It's it's just really odd, and it just totally throws me out. And when like Long's in his sports car driving over the motorway, and I know it's like, you know, it's a film of its time, but the music's weird, man. I, I can't deal with it. The jazz at the beginning, I can just scrape through. But again, this is my personal preference. Um, but in like the action scenes, he's got like this score that plays in the background. It's great. It like matches the tone of the film. But there's so many like little bits of like music that just throw me out because they're just so, the tone is just so different. But that's like nitpicking. I mean, that's just a personal nitpick. But in terms of like the actual film, I mean, it's amazing.
Hmm. That's funny though, because it's definitely a product of the '90s. Because there's a lot of jazz. That's if that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah, there's a lot of jazz heavy, and it feels '90s, which is hilarious. Because I don't know if you know this, but if you do go back and listen to our episode when I put it out, there is theme music for this. And it's a combination of influenced by Commando and the Killer soundtrack. And I told this guy what I wanted, and it makes me laugh because I was going to use some of that jazz for something of another theme, and I'm like, I want to get Cinema.Rich back on my podcast. I cannot listen to jazz thing I have for another movie series, but I can see why. It is very strange. Like it made me chuckle because I remember the '90s, so I'm just, I go, yeah, like it really felt like that montage of him driving. I'm like, yeah, that's '90s. Like that feels old school. But yeah, I get what you mean because I personally liked it, but I understand like yeah, after a while you're like, okay, what's going on here? Because when the action's hitting, that's a different score, and that's really
Yeah,
hitting. I don't really have anything I didn't like about it because yeah, I know it's strange sometimes when someone like some people get mad at you, right? When you're like, I didn't see anything wrong with that movie. Like how like you don't have a magnifying glass, and I'm like, dude, I'm locked in. There's not as much humor, but there is some that are kind of sprinkled throughout it. Did you like the little humor that we got in Hard Boiled?
yeah. I liked I liked kind of the main kind of humor moment, I guess, that I like the most is there's a scene where Tequila and Long meet on his boat, and it's kind of like the first time where they're not blowing each other's heads off, and they're kind of having this initial kind of discussion, and they've got like they're starting off kind of insulting each other, but then they kind of get the measure of each other, and then they kind of meet on a level where they have a few little kind of jokes in between each other, and Long says something like, because he's got the gun on, Tequila's got the gun along, and he says something along the lines of, if you told me to milk a cow, I'd go do it or something. And then Tequila makes another remark, and it's just this really nice little moment that the two have, and it kind of signifies them kind of like bonding. It's like, right, yeah, we're on the same team. I know the deal. And then it's kind of, I'm assuming it's intentional, but the moment where Tequila's got fire coming off his legs, and the baby he's holding just pisses down his leg and like puts the fire out. It's just like insane. It's it reminds me of like Hard Target where Van Damme just punches a snake. It's just so it's just so bizarre, but you just roll with it because it's bizarre, but it kind of works uniquely because it's John Woo, and you kind of like, okay,
Yeah, that's actually great with the peen one because, like, yeah, that could have easily just been him. Like, I'm just gonna jump out of the building while I'm on fire. But they're like, hold on, let's make it believable. Where this baby who when who he's doesn't really know what's going on might just be like, I gotta go, and it's perfect. And then yeah, All Along and Tequila, they constantly are like, they have this like love hate relationship in the beginning, but then like when they get to the hospital they've bonded, right? But then all of a sudden, like when Teresa comes into the picture, they're like the flower conversation happens, and then we do get some serious moments with them in between where their difference in philosophies and outlooks in life. But that humor helps. But one of my favorite parts was when I think Tequila's looking at a paper, and the police at police headquarters, and they're talking about what after his partner had just died, and they're like, "We got all this information." And he goes, I can't believe it's like $3,000 for me to get a place. Like, my girlfriend's gonna be mad. And they're just,
Yeah.
and it's
'Cause
so good. And you're right, though. Some of this is bizarre, but it works because if the action is not as good as it is, if the story's not good or the acting, these humor parts would stick out like a sore thumb. You'd be like, what was the point of that? But you roll with it because, yeah, it is outrageous that he got peed on because, it's practical, but it's just so ridiculous that, like, and you see the pee. And so, yeah, I did enjoy the humor that they used in it. It's one of the times where an action movie, the humor works for, not against it. Now, in terms of the action, how would you classify it? Like over the top, ridiculous, grounded, or like a mix of both, or something different?
I think it's kind of like it's more it kind of more over the top. It is grounded in parts because there's nothing like kind of beyond the realms of people are being thrown everywhere, but it's not like beyond the realms of kind of being slightly believable. But there are parts kind of where in the warehouse, like tequila's coming in on that zip wire, like the it's like he should be dropping just straight down, right? But he kind of like flies across this warehouse, and he's like one guy, and he's like spraying everyone, and like it's like 400 people going flying everywhere. So there are, and at the end where he's jumping out the hospital with like a baby in one arm, and he's coming down with like a power cable, like crazy. So it kind of veers into like a bit of the ridiculous, but it kind of dances that edge between reality and crazy, but it's a really fine line. It does a really good job of kind of dancing that really well, and you're never pulled out of it by going, oh, that wouldn't happen. You're kind of just engrossed in it, just thinking, oh, this is awesome. Like, this looks cool. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. There's just like stuff exploding everywhere and things, and yeah, it's it's great. It's some of the just the best action ever, and I always think back to kind of John Wick because it's kind of comparable, I guess. It's kind of like quite a linear story, and like John Wick has lots of really cool moments. I can't remember any of them because it's all the time, and it's very kind of clinical. It is like very, we call it like a dance. It's very choreographed. It's like a dance between John Wick and the thing. He's just taking people out there front and center, and the set pieces are cool, and he's in the neon drenched club and all that sort of stuff. But there's no one thing that really sticks out for me. I'm like, that's fucking badass. Whereas in Hard Boiled, it's just a bit more gritty and a bit more kind of like, well, these guys are getting hurt. Like, these stuntmen are earning their money. Like, people were hurt making this, like no doubt about it. And it just lands so much better.
Yes, I'm glad that you brought up John Wick because it's funny as I think of Hard Boiled, John Wick's looking like easy over at this point. There's nothing wrong with the choreograph. Like, it is very choreographed. It's very much technical. I would classify as like you said, over the top but grounded, but it's also kind of like it's like everything that's happening in this movie feels like that's where your life's in danger. It's like flight or fight. Like, this may not work 9 times out of 10. It just happens to work in this movie where, like, okay, something's coming at me. Like, there's a motorcycle. He shoots a guy with a motorcycle and it slides, and he has to jump forward and like shoot another one that explodes. That sounds ridiculous, but maybe that one out of 9 times out of 10 it fails, but that one time it works. And I think that's why the action doesn't bother me because it's so jaw dropping because it's not as technical. Like, yeah, there is technicality to it, but at any moment that could have went south. Where John Wick, everybody knows how to do martial arts. Everyone knows how to operate a gun. We're here. It's just a guy's like, let me get on this motorcycle and let me go on top of this car. I think this will help me get tequila. In fact, it does it. And like him coming down the zip line, yeah, like nobody can shoot him. It's like, and he's just throwing grenades. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a part of me that I'm in the warehouse. I'm immediately, as everyone's distracted, I'm booking it out of that warehouse. I'm like, sorry, Johnny. Like, I'm dead. But yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because yeah, I think it's grounded at times. I think it's over the top, but it's really just being like flight or fight. I gotta make it. And speaking of the action, now this is a gimme question, but would you say that there was enough action, or did you want more?
No, I think there's enough. I think if it had more, then we wouldn't get kind of the narrative and the story, and the narrative and the story is with any film, it's what matters most. Because if you don't care about the story or you don't care about the characters, the rest of it just doesn't matter. Because no matter how good the rest of it is, it's probably going to be fairly mediocre to me anyway. But if you've got like a compelling story, you like really invested in the characters, you care what happens, and so then the action becomes even more important. You know, you enjoy it more because the stakes are higher, and you're like, shit, guy's gonna die here. What? Um, and you run that risk of, and again, I'll bring up John Wick because it's like the most modern equivalent, I suppose. John Wick has too much action, and it becomes exhausting, and you'll watch kind of. My favourite one, I think, is John Wick 4. I think is the best one, but I'm exhausted by the end of it because there's so much action. I think it's like 3 hours long. There is so much action, and you know, fair play to them, but by the end of it, I couldn't tell you what a particular scene. All I know is loads of people die, and we've moved throughout a continent, but there's so much action, you're numb to it. You're almost not even paying attention to what's happening because it's just bang, 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 one after the other all the time. Whereas Hard Boiled, you'll get like this amazing scene. We start off with the tea room, which is a good enough sequence to be a finale in any other film, and that's how we start. And then so you have this amazing kind of shootout scene, and then you have some time to breathe. You get a bit of narrative, and then we kind of move into another even better shootout in the warehouse. And then we've got more time to breathe where we get time with the characters and the narrative. And then we're kind of building into the hospital, which is kind of a couple of scenes because it kind of moves throughout and it escalates as we go through. But you get that breathing space to kind of come back down, get back into the story. And then when the action kicks off again, you're like, right, I'm in it. And then you're really looking at it. You're really like enjoying it and taking it all in rather than just being kind of fatigued.
Yeah. You know, that's a really good analogy. Like, I love the John Wick movies. The action doesn't bother me, but yeah, if Hard Boiled goes that same route, right? I would not feel any stakes for these characters. I'd be like, I just hope they make it, but then like I wouldn't get those moments where like Tequila and All Along are talking about their dreams. You know, like that is such a important thing. And then some of the action correlates into the story because we see flashbacks at the beginning. Like, you need that. So I think there's plenty of action. And I think that was a great. I'm glad that you keep bringing up John Wick because I love all of them, but I don't. And I have a question at the end about this, but yeah, John Wick it stayed on my mind throughout this whole movie for a particular reason. Now with the action, I think you may have said it already, but I'll just in case maybe there's something else you want to talk about. But like your favorite action sequence, was that just the T scene, or was there maybe something else?
I think overall the tea scene was my favourite kind of sequence, but there is one kind of shot in particular. So it's in the warehouse, and Tequila's got his shotgun. Well, there's actually two little bits. One of them's not really action. So they're in the warehouse, and it all goes quiet because Long's waiting for Uncle Hoy to arrive, and like the warehouse is deadly silent, and all the other guys have kind of disappeared, and he's waiting for the Uncle Hoy to arrive, and then in the background you can hear Tequila like loading the shotgun. He's just slowly putting these like rounds in. You hear it like echo through the warehouse, and the way it's shot, like Long can hear that, but he's unaware of kind of what's about to happen, which is a really cool scene. But in the warehouse, it's during kind of the shootout where Tequila like shoots at Long, and he's like diving through the middle of this open car, and like the camera like follows him as he's like dove through it, and all the inside of the car like shreds with all like the pellets from the shotgun. That's like probably like the best shot in the film, and it's like over in the split of second, but it's like that is amazing, like the coolest thing ever.
one of my highlights, actually. I should have mentioned it, but yes, love that because can you imagine showing this as Hollywood studios? Like, let's bring John Woo over to America, and that's the scene, and the union goes, absolutely not putting any act in that. Because yeah, it is so insane to watch it and you see it and you're like, Tony Leung must have felt something through that because that's so close. But that's a great action sequence, and same with the loading the gun. Now, somebody I could see arguing, be like, "How could Ah Long not hear that?" But I'm like, you have to remember, he's conflicted right now. He has to turn on his boss, and I thought this thing. I was like, he should have heard that, but when your mind is thinking about something else, you ignore things. But that's a great one. I love the hospital scene is when they keep jumping through the windows. I don't know what's going on. They're
Yeah,
constantly jumping through windows, and there's some long takes. But the warehouse scene to me was insane when Tequila shows up. The tea house, I think, like that one scene in the tea house where Tequila jumps is chasing the guy after he kills his partner, and he does that like roll into the flower and manages to get the gun on him. That is insane. That is like if I had to pick one, since you picked, I think you picked the best one, but that one was probably my second because I go, do I feel confident that I'm rolling in flour that I'm gonna land and shoot him? The answer is no. And yeah, wow, I love that you pointed that out because to me, if somebody's like, "What's the hype with Hard Boiled?" I'm like, show them that Tony Leung going through that car. That should be the biggest selling point. And this kind of maybe similar question, but everyone has different interpretations. What do you think was the most insane scenario in this movie?
I think it, I think it's jumping out of that hospital at the end when he's got like the baby in one arm. I say he's got a power cable in the other. He's flying out this bloody fifth story window, fire everywhere, and he lands so smoothly. It's unbelievable. He like barely like has to like bend his knees. But I mean, someone jumped out that window. Like a stunt guy jumped out that bloody window. I don't know how they filmed it, but yeah, he like as he lands, like all this fire just drops around him, and it's like a long shot, and you see kind of Chow Yun Fat, like he's really stood there amongst all this fire, and you can feel that, like you feel the heat there. And I think I saw this like clip or I heard it from like a making of thing with John Woo, and there's like a sequence where Chow Yun Fat's like running up the corridor, and the hospital's like exploding, and he's doing like one of those scenes where like the doors, like the fires come through doors, and he's kind of narrowly being missed by it. And I heard like they did a few takes of that, and they did like one particular take where they set the pyros off early, and Chow in fact wasn't expecting it, and like the shot they used is the shot where he wasn't expecting it because he's like absolutely terrified, and he's like running in slow motion. He chucks the gun behind him, and they said like he was like fuming at the end of that take because he thought he was going to die. And when you watch the film back, you can kind of see that on his face. He's like, shit.
Yeah. Actually, I think I heard this story was at the end of it. They did the Q&A. I think that's where you might have seen the clip was him talking about because I remember him. Yeah, John Woo says something like where Chow Yun Fat comes up to him. He goes, "Are you trying to fucking kill me?" Like like
Yeah.
yes, this is perfect. I'm so glad you brought that up because we love John Woo for doing this, and sometimes you gotta because I'm taking acting classes. It does help that you don't know what's gonna happen, so you gotta improvise. But that has got to be terrifying that you're like, whoa, I think these are going off too quickly, but you can't be like, cut, cut. You just roll with it. And then you're like, let me go talk to John after this. But that is, that is pretty crazy with the baby. Mine is similar, was the whole baby aspect is like, they're like, we got to get these babies out. And they have like guys who came in that are trying to like, they break into the building, then they get back on their thing and they're outside and they're trying to come down. They're getting shot because to me, my heart was racing because that is scary on top of being like jaw dropping action because like these innocent children at any moment, the way these explosions are going, Cinema-Rich, I mean, I'm thinking somebody's dying. Like, and the good thing about this movie is like, obviously none of the kids got hurt, but if you've never seen it before, or even if you have, you kind of get lost in the movie where you never know for sure. Are these kids going to make it or patients going to make it? I mean, everybody is at stake, and I'm pretty sure that that hospital would not pass inspection because it seems to be explosion proof. Everywhere you go, that thing wants to be it wants to explode. Now let's talk about some of the deaths in the movie. Just curious what your feelings were. And here's we'll go with the first one, Uncle Hoy.
So he's a bad guy, Uncle Hoy. When you think about it, he's like a drug lord. So he's a bad guy. But and you don't get a lot of time with him. But the time you do get with him, you kind of feel like not sorry for him a little bit. You know, he's kind of like this kind of big drug lord, but he kind of wants to retire, but he can't because he's looking after kind of his henchman, I'll call him. And he's like that fatherly figure that the guys have. And then later on, when Long has to betray him, he says to him, sometimes he says something along the lines of, sometimes you've got to do things that you don't want to do. And he's like, I knew this day was coming, but I didn't know you would be the one to do it, sort of thing. And when he kills him, probably one of my favourite scenes in the movie, aside for the action, is just the expression on Long's face, because he's got like tears in his eyes. Like, he's acting, he's got tears in his eyes. He's killed this kind of fatherly figure that he's become close with, even though he's an undercover cop. Essentially, he's putting him away. And he turns around and he looks at Johnny. He's made him make the decision. He kind of does this like fake grin at him, but he's got all these tears in his eyes. I'm like, that's like such a in a film with all the action, that was like a really nuanced kind of emotional scene for that character, and it's over really quickly. But yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree with Uncle Hoy. Like, yeah, he's a bad guy, but there's something about respecting the bad guy who has a code. Because when they don't have a code, those are the ones you got to watch out for because they're the worst. But in the earlier scene when we after the library, we see All Along meet up with Uncle Hoy in the group, and little Co comes in, and Uncle Hoy's like, you got to watch out for that one. The nice ones are the ones you got to worry about, which was like felt like something was, it was telling me something's gonna happen, and of course the one you don't think is gonna betray you is All Along, which really he kind of got forced into it. He kind of got trapped into this where like if he didn't do it, he's gonna die. So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. I felt really bad for the uncle because he said, "This is what, yeah, like you said, this is what bad guys do. We either survive or we kill the other person." He's like, "But protect my men." That was heartbreaking. And Tony Leung really sells that. Where Johnny is so Johnny, it's funny. I always laugh at bad guys who are oblivious. I'm like, that guy's got tears in his eye. He's conflicted. You might want to keep an eye on that dude later on. You know what I mean? Because asking somebody to kill their boss when they're loyal is one of the worst things you can do. Now let's go back even further to the beginning of the movie. How did you feel about Tequila's partner dying?
I didn't feel an awful lot, if I'm honest, because you get like, I mean, he dies minute 5, minute like 2 to 4, the guy's playing the drums. So you don't get a lot of time. You don't get a lot of time with him. You only get like a really quick snapshot of a conversation between him and Tequila, where he kind of mentions, "Oh, do you want to see a picture of my boy? He's like 7 now." And Tequila's not really listening to him because he's looking over his shoulder at the guys about to walk through the door. And so you don't get a lot of time with him. So you don't really feel, I guess you don't really feel anything for his death, but he's the setup for like the driving force of Tequila. And kind of what you see from then on from Tequila is he's, as a character, he's kind of like emotionally a little bit immature, I think. I mean, the way he kind of references his girlfriend and the way he kind of is with the other policemen in the station, he's kind of a bit immature. But he's got like the courage, hasn't he? He'll throw himself in there and he'll do what's right, and he'll protect and he'll be loyal to his friends and the other policemen. So he's kind of like that. He's got that kind of like, yeah, like kind of dumb courage, I suppose. He's not calculated and manipulative. So, and when his partner dies, that, he's almost got like PTSD from it, because I think there's a scene later on where him and Long try and open up some electric doors, and Long gets electrocuted. He like falls on the floor, and then he has like a flashback of his partner dying like in the same way. So he's kind of got this like trauma that follows him. But yeah, in terms of like that character, I don't think you get enough time to really, care, I suppose.
Yeah. I just felt bad for him because when because I was like, Tequila told you not to go in, and you kind of jumped the gun and you fell right into the trap. It sucks, but yeah, when the electrocution, the thing about this movie is the flashbacks. Even during the action, you'll get a story flashback that kind of mirrors a previous scene. Is brilliant. Now let's talk about this. What I'm curious on is what did you think of Mad Dog's death?
Um, yeah, really, he's kind of like he's like the character that's like the evil guy. He's not the ultimate evil guy because that's Johnny, but Johnny hasn't got that kind of screen presence. Whereas Mad Dog's like the lunatic guy. He's got like the leather gloves, the scar on his face, that sort of stuff. But what you see later on in the film is that even he's got a code. He's got like a code of honor, and it's kind of like you don't kill innocent women and children. And so kind of there's going to be this kind of final standoff between him and Long at the end in the hospital, and they're surrounded by like patients, and Johnny comes in and just like wastes them all, and then that kind of like he crosses that boundary, and even though it's his boss, he tries to like turn on him because he just, you don't break the code. And I think Johnny says something along, because he says to him, why would you do that? And he says something along the lines of, I'll just go over anyone who's in my way. I don't care. I've got no boundary. I've got no line. And so, yeah, it was interesting to see kind of the guy who is almost like the right-hand man, kind of rabid dog kind of guy who goes around killing people for Johnny. He's kind of got a conscience. And that was interesting to see him get killed near the end.
Yeah, I mean, like you're right. Like the whole time, I'm like, this guy's a badass. I mean, he with one eye, he can accomplish what I can't even do with glasses or without glasses. With two, but he's this ruthless killer. He's really badass. Even if you don't like him, but there are trickles of his conflict. Is like he kind of like you'll look at they'll have shots of him, and he doesn't seem to agree with everything that Johnny does. But then, like with the patients, that somehow gets him to say something like, "Hey, we should let the patients go." And he's like, that's a line we don't. There's certain lines you don't cross. And he goes, "Well, I make the line," which comes back later with this hospital, is because you have to respect Mad Dog for being like, "All right, let them go." And his face when he sees Johnny light them up, it's like it is pure horror that he shot the gun out of his hand, and he tells Johnny like, "What are you doing, man?" Like, and when Johnny wastes him, I already hated Johnny, but I was like, okay, we're gonna have to finish this now because you have now crossed multiple lines. So yeah, that death, I felt bad for him at the end. Even if I didn't like the character fully, I felt something. And one thing I forgot to talk about, I wanted to ask you, what did you think of the performances in this movie? Did any of the actors stand out to you with their character performances?
Yeah, I forget his name, Tony Long. For me, he was the standout. Just because of his kind of nuanced character. His character had like, they're all good characters, but I think his really stood out because it had kind of those themes of kind of identity, because you don't really find out a lot about him, but he references kind of the only person who's got his birth records is like the police inspector. And he kind of he has a sense of not belonging to anyone. And you kind of get snippets of that through the film. And, there's a scene when they meet in his boat with him and Tequila, and he asks him about the paper cranes hanging from the ceiling. Like, why do you make paper cranes? He said, "Oh, I hate making paper cranes, but I make one for every person I've killed." And you're like, wow, this guy's cold, man. Like he's got all these trophies. He's like a cold killer, but he's not. And at the end of the film, you see him kind of throw those paper cranes in the ocean. And it's actually, for me, it's more of a reminder of the people he's killed, and it's like a guilt that he's kind of tormenting himself with, and they're just constantly there, this guilt all the time. And I think his character has like so much interesting depth to it, and played brilliantly with not a lot of time really in between the action sequences. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, Tony Leung. I first saw him. My introduction was Shang-Chi, and I remember telling somebody I was with, I said, "Where the hell's that guy been? Get him to the front." And then I saw people on Film Tour be like, "Oh, he's in the mood for love," and I saw that. I'm really into it. Hard Boiled, he's incredible. He just really is layered in his performance. I really was a fan of him. And everything you said, I don't want to reiterate, but it was perfect what you said, because it's true about his character. Even though it did make me laugh, is the boat scene, that ridiculous Chow Yun Fat doing like a Superman. I can let it go, but I rewound it like 4 times, going, how the hell did they? 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work. He is Chow Yun Fat. And speaking of him, I think he might be, in my opinion, the greatest action star. No one's ever looked cooler. I mean, the guy has like smoked cigarettes with precision. He wears glasses in other movies, but in here, a toothpick throughout all this action in one scene, one sequence, crazy. Both of them together are magic. I love watching them together, and I think these are performances that may not get as much respect, because I think people are not willing to watch things with subtitles, but these are truly the finest actors. And this movie proves, with John Woo as director, you have a trio of talent forever engraved in cinema. And yeah, I love the paper crane. I'm glad you mentioned that. Now here's a fan question as we wrap it up. John Woo says, Cinema.Rich, I'm going to allow you to reenact one stunt in Hard Boiled. I will film it. I promise I won't set the timers off early, but you can choose any stunt you would like to do. Which one are you picking?
I'm jumping through that car. 100%. There's a 99% chance I am going to die, because I'm not like an athlete. So I'm definitely going to cock it up, and I'm going to die in the process of doing it. But that I'm doing that. That's like one of the scenes where I honestly was like, wow. And when you watch the film, there's a lot of wow moments. There's a lot of people, there's like a grenade that goes off on like a table, and some dude literally gets blown up and like thrown. Like he's right there. So there's loads of like amazing moments, but for some reason that's just such a cool moment. I think it's the way the camera moves, and like the slow mo, and just all the bits of the car like coming apart as you're going through it. It's awesome.
That would be cool to have John Woo be like, action, and then he sets it off early. You're like, what the hell, man? That is a good one. I think the one that I would do is ridiculous, because I'm not really tall, so I'm not. I would have to jump high enough. Is when he shoots the motorcycle guy, and the motorcycle is sliding as another motorcycle is jumping on top of a car to come shoot him, and I'm supposed to jump over that and lean and hit that one. So I'm gonna have to do some air jumps. Confident, Rich, that I can do that, and I think it'd be fun if we both did it and watch the takes of how many times it takes us to do it correctly. But yeah, that would be fun. Those two stunts, those are two of the best stunts in the movie. And then let's see here. I think you kind of answered this, but you were a big fan of Ah Long. Was there any other characters that you liked?
Uh, yeah, I mean they're all like likable. I liked Mad Dog. I think he brought kind of that. He kind of brought that kind of light and darkness. So because Johnny as a bad guy, he's kind of the guy in the suit. He says some horrible stuff. He's pulling the strings, but he's not kind of like the bad guy. Like visually, he's not tearing people apart. So it was really good to have that character as Mad Dog kind of have that kind of balance between the good and the bad. But everyone was great. I mean, you couldn't say anyone was bad in this. But what I did love was John Woo cameoing himself as Mr. Woo, the barman. It was great, and he's giving like life advice to Chow Yun Fat. It's great.
Yeah, That's a good one. Yeah, seeing John Woo, I got excited every time because I'm like, he's the guy that you got to go to ask for advice. I like Tequila all along. Everyone's great in it. I did like the interactions with Teresa because it's pretty ridiculous. Like, yeah, those are my characters. Now, let's say you and I are joining the force, and they say to us, Cinema-Rich and the Patrick. Actually, that worked perfectly the way I said that. And they said you got to choose your partner. You can either be with Along or Tequila. Who are you going with?
Tequila all day long, because he if he doesn't get you killed, and there's a good chance he's going to get you killed, you're going to hang out at the jazz bar, you have a few drinks, you're going to be in the bands, you're going to have some good times. But if you go with Long, I think you've got to watch out because the guy's going to stab you in the back as soon as look at you. If the money changes the right hands, you're a dead man. So I have to go with Tequila all day long.
I also have to go with Tequila just because I'm with you all the way, Tequila. Until you're like, hey, you want to go to the tea house? I'm like, no, you do that with your partner. We're not doing that. All right. As we wrap this up, let's talk about the real big action finale, the hospital. There's so much going on. There's carbon dioxide when they get caught in the basement, Mad Dog's finale, which we talked about. We got the babies. Like, your overall, what did you think of that finale for the film?
I think it was like phenomenal, and I think, like I referenced earlier, in films you're kind of building towards the conclusion. Like, you want a satisfying conclusion, no matter what the film is. And when you start off at a level that's so high, you've got to best it, and you're kind of like fighting yourself because you're like, I started up here. I started on like 11. How do I better that? And so the finale had to be big, and it was big, and I think it went on for like half an hour or something. Like the final shootout was like long. It's like almost a film. But yeah, it starts out in the hospital, and there's bits going on. There's people getting killed here and there, and then they go to like the morgue, and they're opening the morgue freezer doors, and then you're like, there's another level. So in this hospital, there's like an underground basement, which is like, so there's another like section to this hospital, and then you do that, and they fly out of these morgue tables like rockets, tearing everyone apart, and then begins like a half an hour just bloodbath of just bullets, and then in all the best action style, you just wrap it up with just completely demolishing the place with C4, and there are real explosions going off everywhere, and you can just feel it, and it looks glorious. And right at the very end, when Johnny gets killed, where Tequila shoots him in the head, there's like a really satisfying kind of practical effect where you see kind of like this bullet go through this practical effect head, and it's really cool. It's just like a great way to get rid of like the character who's you hate the most.
Yeah. The hospital, it's so long, but everything is like, it's a culmination of everything. Like, you got this jaw-dropping action. I mean, they're coming out of the morgue thing, like you were saying. From the other side, they're doing stretcher shootings. Like, they're jumping through windows and doors. I mean, there's explosions everywhere. Like, I would never go to this hospital because I can't. I'm afraid that it's gonna blow up when I'm there. But it's just jaw dropping. But through all that, you're also getting the emotional stakes, the emotional investment of the story of these characters comes into fold during these moments where we really get to know Tequila and Along, and they form this brotherhood while we're getting the finale with Mad Dog and Johnny, and then the babies, and then there's people. So there's stakes on top of the action. You're worried that are anybody that we care about, or even just these regular citizens, are going to make it. It is ridiculous. Like, you're right. He started off at like 11 with the tea house scene. Most directors would drop the ball on this. John Woo goes, no, no, no. I'm going to make it a 22 the way I'm going, and it's long, but you never really are bothered by it because you're so caught into it. Like, you're right next to them as they're going through all this, and they're like Cinema-Rich, Patrick, jump through the window, and I'm like, no, I'll stay by the stretcher and I'll just climb over. Good, but yeah, that finale with Johnny had crossed the line to the point where, like, when Along says like, I got this, I'm a cop, and he disappears. I was like, oh no, please don't die, right? And John Woo could have easily went that route, but what he does is like Johnny shows up and he's the ultimate baddie. He has that's so funny I said baddie like a chick, but he's the ultimate baddie though, like how he is like he shows up and all along is kind of at the end, and Chow Yun Fat doesn't, Tequila doesn't waste bullets, so he's ready. But then that what happened in the beginning has this thing on him where he's like, I gotta play ball because he cares about All Long and he knows what All Long wants in this world, and he doesn't want to see another cop die. And All Long doing something crazy, like I said, 9 times out of 10, it does not go well. But that gun shoots himself, and we get that awesome shot that you talked about where Johnny goes out, and I started clapping. I stood up and clapped like I was at the Oscars because I was so sick of Johnny. I had no love for that guy. I hated him. He was the worst. And of course, when we get the end where we see Ah Long is now on a boat, but the paper cranes are dumped, and he's on his way to Iceland. It was such a satisfying ending because he got to fulfill his dream. You know, Tequila gets to fulfill his dream when he's at the bar for the jazz, but they both are satisfied. And I think that is a great conclusion where it's not like, oh, they had to make it happy. It works for the story, it works for everything. And you can't just help but feel like a bunch of like joy. You're like, my boys survived, you know, and everyone else too. And here we go. This is the finale here with Hard Boiled. Out of 100%, what would you rate it?
I'm gonna be annoying, and I'm gonna give it 100%. And I'll say that because when I rated it on my letterbox, I gave it 5 out of 5. As an action film, I don't think there's anything you can say that it didn't achieve. It's absolutely adrenaline inducing. It's a spectacle. It's exciting. You've got great story. Like, what more do you want from an action film? I mean, part of me is thinking, you can't give it 100% because nothing's perfect. But it's pretty damn. I would say it's pretty damn perfect for an action film.
Yeah, and truth be told, I think it's funny when people criticize others about their rating. I'm like, I could care less. If you think a movie is 100%, hell yeah. Like, why are we being so negative toward each other? And I'm gonna give it. Might be the highest rating on this episode. So this rebooted show, I'm giving it a 99%. That's how much I love it. Because it changed me completely, Cinema.Rich. I don't look at action the same anymore. I get frustrated with action where I'm like, they don't have what John Woo has. And I didn't appreciate him in the 90s. Now I look at it and I go, this is a work of art. If we look at movies like, it's so funny I bring this up, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, you go down to, even the 80s movies like Thief or Blowouts, or you go to the 90s or like Goodfellas or There Will Be Blood that you mentioned. Shockingly, I'm going to say that Hard Boiled should be up there too, because that is an architect of how to do an action movie correctly. And it seems like an easy task, but not many people have been able to sustain it, And so I'm glad to hear that we're on the same page. And this is a question I want to ask you as we wrap this up. A couple more questions. Is this a definitive 90s movie?
100%. 100%. In the 90s was the golden age of action. It doesn't get any better than the 90s. When you've got Con Air, The Rock, all these sort of films, Bad Boys, they're just some of the best action films ever. And, action films now are not the same. They don't get the same love. They don't get the same investment from Hollywood because they don't do the numbers. And it's a real shame because action films were kind of like the gateway for me into kind of other more kind of complex films and world cinema and all that sort of stuff. So Hard Boiled is probably, it's the blueprint. It's the thing that inspired everything after it, and it's the film that put John Woo into Hollywood, really. He came out of Hong Kong cinema after Hard Boiled, went in to do Hard Target, and then went on from there. So it's kind of like it's that big of a film. Um, you can have your preferences whether it's your favorite action film or not. It's not my favorite action film, but I will. I can't deny that it is one of the greatest action films ever made.
Yeah, I 100%. I don't know how to top what you just said. Basically, I'm giving you the sequel to Hard Boiled 2 here. Yeah, it is, in my opinion, one of the definitive films of the 90s. And it took me a long time. I didn't discover it till just recently. So, like, imagine that experience. And that's what I hope others will take from it. If you didn't grow up with Hard Boiled and you get to watch this, I hope it lives up to what everyone's telling you because it personally did for me. Now, in terms of best films, do you think this is John Woo's best film? And the same goes for Chow Yun Fat and Tony Leung. Three questions.
I think it's a bit like the question you asked me earlier. Yes, I think it is John Woo's best film in every way. I have a nostalgia to some of his other films, so that for me does it more. I would probably rewatch them more than I will rewatch Hardball, but that's just because I've got a personal affinity with those films. But yeah, if you had never watched a John Woo film ever and you wanted to know where to start, Hardball's the one. And then everything after that, you're going to be like, got it. And then Chow Yun Fat, I'm not massive on his kind of filmography. I've got City on Fire, which I thought was okay. It got more praise than what I thought of it. But this is my favourite film with him in it, for sure. Again, I've got to see The Killer. I hear it's fantastic, so that might change when I see that. And Tony, this is, I think, probably the first film I've seen with him in. I know he's in a lot of like Chungking Express, In the Mood for Love, some of those, and they're on my list to get because they're Criterions. So I know they've had a lot of 4Ks come out of those films that he's in, so they're on my list to get. So hopefully in the future I'll be able to experience some of his other work.
Yeah, I agree on John Woo's best movie. I think it's if this is the one that you're like, if you need to see a John Woo movie, whether you've never seen his movies or like I'm familiar with his Hollywood movies, this is the one. Best Chow Yun Fat movie. It's the best in his filmography, but I've always loved The Killer. I love his, I would say possibly this is his, greatest. I mean, having a baby also helps, you're holding a baby while this is happening. Tony Leung, if I had saw this before In the Mood for Love, I would have said it was, but I think that movie In the Mood for Love is still his best movie. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is one that gets probably brought up whenever they're mentioned, so that they're in good company. Now, the last question that will tie into one more question. There's two more questions here. Would you own this? And I believe you already said you did, but would you own this or rewatch it in the future?
There we go. So
Yeah.
Apple Arrow, yeah, picked up the Arrow. It's absolutely, if you've got the means to it, own it because it's phenomenal. And this particular edition, the Arrow Video Edition, has artwork by Tony Stella, who passed away last week. So privileged to own some of his artwork, and he did some of the artwork for The Killer and some other Arrow releases. So yeah, amazing film, amazing release. It's one I'll definitely be revisiting over and over again. But yeah, super happy to have it.
Yeah, I also would agree, and rest in peace to Tony. So I wasn't as familiar with his work until I saw what he did, and I was like, oh my goodness, this man was the real deal. But I have both.
Oh,
Both. Because
interesting.
I wanted to ask you this question because I don't know if you're familiar, but there was a huge debate. So I bought Hard Boiled, the Shout version, because I'm based in America. I didn't think it was a big deal. And then I see this discourse about the difference in the releases between Arrow and Shout, where there's like a blue hue kind of like filter, and people are saying that that's what it originally looked like, and that the Shout is terrible. So then I bought this one, And I'm actually happy because I think the Arrow artwork, Tony Stella's, is way better than the Shout, but the Shout's good. I wanted to ask you, do you know anything about this discourse, and does it really matter to you?
Yeah, I saw people like posting screenshots and then videos of it side by side. I think it's mainly like the warehouse scene. Um, that to a degree, who cares? To a degree, look, if you saw the film way back when, and you've got a memory of it, and it's a particular way in your memory, and that memory is it's a warmer hue, get the warmer hue one because you're going to be happy. If you don't care, if you're like me and you don't have that affinity to it or the memories of it, I just went with the package that I preferred, and I loved the artwork on the Arrow one, so I went with the Arrow one. If the Shout one had better artwork, I probably would have picked up the Shout one. So I don't have that affinity to it. But at the end of the day, does it change the film, or would it change my experience of the film? No. I think you just go with what you prefer, whether you like a cooler hue or a warmer one.
Cinema.Rich, we need people like you, because I saw this and I go, well, I saw it in theaters, the Shout version. I didn't really care. I mean, it wouldn't bother me either way, but I bought both because I love the movie. And I truth be told, I think Arrow, the artwork is superior, but I think we should be thankful as a film community that these are the problems that we have to deal with. Where you said this, you had to get a bootleg to watch this originally. We live in a time now where you can buy either version of this, and you have a classic in your hand. And like you said, depending on how you feel about it, just buy the one that makes sense to you. I bought both because I really didn't care about it, but I just want to own both because I think they're beautiful pieces of work, not just as physical media like artwork. And so I just wanted to ask you, because I thought that I was reading this and the people are getting real vicious with each other, and I'm just like, it's like watching the hospital scene, but everyone's missing the window and doors, so they're arguing with one another, And then one guy pulled out like a clip of the negative, the 35 millimeter. And I'm like, bro, I was like, sir, you win. And I bought the Arrow the next day. I didn't argue with anybody, but I'm grateful because I'm glad that you own it too. And this concludes Hard Boiled. I want to thank you sincerely because this was an absolute treat to speak to you, get to know you. I hope if I'm lucky enough, I'd love to have you come back on as I do this, because I do need guest hosts. But you were just a pleasure to talk to, and I can't thank you enough for helping me not look like a fool by naming this movie series after John. And nobody did it, and I was just like, oh no. But thank you for helping me. Like, I pulled the air one just for you. Thank you so much for doing this with me and helping me revisit this only 2 months later or 3 months later and being like, wow, this might be my favorite action movie at the moment.
No, thank you for having me on, because it's been an absolute pleasure. Would love to come on in the future. I love talking films. I love seeing new films and kind of just experiencing them and getting to talk about it. But yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, and if real quickly as we wrap it up, if people would like to follow you, Cinema.Rich, and they should, so they can get a little richness in their film journey with your magic, with your name, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. So it's at Cinema.Richard. Or if you want to grab my letterbox, it's at Cinema_Rich. Or TikTok. I'm not really on that much. I might come back. But again, it's at Cinema_Rich. But if you want to chat to me, I'm mainly on Twitter.
Yeah, and as his mutual, I highly recommend. I mean, now Cinema.Rich might be getting DMs from me, be like, hey, I saw this movie. I was hoping you saw it.
Oh, pleasure. Please do.
Pleasure. So thank you so much, Cinema.Rich, for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Cinema.Rich for coming on to the show. It was an absolute blast to talk to you. We hope to have you back on. And folks, this is the end of the episode. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're listening to this through any podcast app, make sure you hit the follow so you can stay up to date when new episodes drop. If you're on the YouTube side of things, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to stay up to date when new episodes drop. And you can go to youtube.com/@TOCmovies. Now, you should definitely follow us on the social media platforms. It's at TOC Movies. which is on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok. That's where I tease when new episodes are going to drop. And of course, you can just hit the link in the bio, which is a link tree that will take you to everything I mentioned, the podcast apps, YouTube, and the social media handles. So go there if you don't want to type in anything. And that is it. So I am the Patrick, your host. Until next time, stay tuned for another episode of Tomorrow Comes Movies.